position, because obviously whatever we're getting into right now, not necessarily we'll be finally doing that, but Consult gives you that exposure to so many different branches that you do have many options to choose from at the end when you're leaving this, or when you continuing this as well.
Along with these big career goal level factors, there are a lot of smaller reasons which both consulting firms pitch and which also attracted us when we first began contemplating whether we want to do this or not. So one example would be that it's not a desk job, it's not you working on a screen all the time behind a table. There's generally quite a lot of travel and a lot of people interaction involved. So if you are interested in working with a lot of people across different tiers, so it's not that you being the lowest rung will always speak to someone in the lowest rung. Your communication will range from the lowest rung all the way to CEOs. So that level of exposure, that level of opportunity is also what's attractive. So we've heard travel as a reason, we've heard people interaction as a reason. Network is a big factor which comes in. Any other thing that consulting companies pitch? Exit options we've covered. So exit options, you can pretty much go anywhere, and the reason why people consider people coming out of this industry of high value, because it teaches you structured thinking, it teaches you thinking which is aligned to businesses. So it's a lot of logic and structure which gets built into how you usually solve any problem. So essentially it teaches you problem solving. So that's the pitch most consulting companies will make for you. That's the pitch which all of us bought into. So I think that's covered by consulting.
Cherry on the top is obviously the way you get treated.
So the funda in consulting, they says that you have a high intensity job. You will work whatever hours you have to with the client.
High intensity job. I think it's not all fun and games.
It's not fun and games at all. So you've got a high intensity job, and what they promise you is that you have to use all your energy on your job. We'll handle everything else, from your travel, accommodation, food, whatever it is. If you're on a project, they will put you up in a 5-star or whatever. You look at your job. So that's the other pitch that they make.
The intensity part is not a joke. I mean, the first thing I think a partner at BCG told us was, this job is not going to give you work-life balance. But at this age, you shouldn't be looking for work-life balance.
No job which you do take up ahead after your BTech life or whatever, there will be no work-life balance at all. Don't expect that.
Hey, work-life balance people know, man.
You would have a lot of time to chill. Yeah. You'll have 17 hours work days, not 17, 14 hour work days, simple that.
17? So you should be good with them, man. So just to recap, platform to do a lot because you interact with the higher ups everywhere. Trampoline in case you want to leave this job and do something better, always a very good option. So these are the two major plus points. Okay, and this recap thing consulting teaches you as an example, just so that you drive points home well. Okay. Expectations of company. So do you want to do this company wise? Resume first? Okay, so we'll start with the prep timeline. So prep timeline for management consulting companies and Insti. Let's talk about duals and BTech separately. So dual.
Okay, mine will be a little too biased because I haven't applied to too many companies, but it was pretty much like this. I gave GMAT in July, so the entire summer I put up in GMAT. Then August was resume. That was how it was like. August 31st was the resume deadline. Yeah, so August 31st was the first deadline. So I had my probably first draft ready by August 2nd week and then kept iterating it until August 31st. September 13th was the last deadline, so I made a minor changes after August 31st. But after the resume, it was mostly case prep. So sometime mid-September, I started off case prep. Probably too early, but yeah, mid-September I started off case prep. But I didn't start case prep with case group buddies. I mean, it's not required, but I just like doing my prep in a very slow-paced manner. So I started off early and chilled out the entire time. I had no other work.
That's too early. Start early and finish it off.
One thing you should do in summer for duals, take up this MCAT test because all the placement tests are CAT pattern. So make sure you prep for CAT in summer duals because you don't have anything else to do in summer. as well as do your resume. So these are the two main things which you should be doing in summer.
Exactly. In summer, concentrate on something you wouldn't want to waste time on during the SEM, because the SEM, it will be jam-packed. If you're applying to lots of companies, August will go for resumes completely because you have to make 5 resumes. So in the summer, concentrate on things which you wouldn't want to waste time on during the SEM.
So one thing that will help you like get through the resume making part fast is if you have like a thing called a brag sheet. So essentially just have one word doc where you're writing whatever you want, but write it well. So essentially what you're going to do at the end of it is you'll realize somewhere mid-August that your resume is nowhere close to being done. So just copy paste from the brag sheet. And then after the point figure out whether the spacings and all fit. So that is something that will help you like get through it really fast, because whenever you're bored in summer, think of a point that you might want to put in your resume, write it in a brag sheet. So that is what we did. So
because you're getting a lot of diverse views here, prep does vary from person to person. Before you start your prep, sit down with a senior who is familiar with the process and maybe just figure out what timeline would suit you. So someone who ideally knows you would help, and that would help you set your timeline. Of course, being dual or being BTech will also determine how you phase yourself. For example, these guys had a lot of time, so they could start early and do it thoroughly. If you're a BTech and if you've got other responsibilities also on campus, then you will be very strained for time. So then time management becomes very important. You'll have to start at you end up starting slightly later, and you have to really do things at a high intensity in short bursts. You can't take your own time with it. So this, how you prep, stays the same. When you prep is something you have to figure out for yourself with the help of seniors who are familiar with the process. You want to go with how you prep for BTechs?
In addition to what Bhavik said, what would decide your prep timeline is basically what you're focusing on. So I think Nitish already spoke about GMAT. So, for example, some of us wrote GRE. Now, that is another timeline because you need to prep for that, and you'll have, if you're applying, you'll have to actually research universities and stuff like that. So, that is another timeline. Depending on which types of companies you're applying to, you'll also have preparation for those different verticals. So, there'll be a lot of different things to consider, and Bhavik's already pointed out if you have campus responsibilities like core trips and stuff. So there are a lot of things to consider, therefore it's a very personal decision. I think
So okay, I hope you guys have got this idea. There is a pre-resume deadline phase, then there is a period between resume deadline and the shortlist coming out. Post shortlist, there is a lot of case prep, and at the end of it there is interviews. So that is the timeline. So at each stage, what you do, like at each stage of the timeline varies from person to person, as people just pointed out. But these are the different phases, and as Bhavik mentioned, I think you should like figure out what you're doing in each phase after sitting down with the senior. So for example, the perspective that Vikram just pointed out about GRE, you won't get from the others. So like that, you should just speak to someone who's going to have a similar timeline as yours, and for each phase, figure out what you're doing. Yeah. So resume, prepare your resume, submit it, wait for the shortlist to come out. After the shortlist come out, do case prep in earnest. Some of us did case prep before the shortlist. And after the shortlist, after you've done case prep, on December 1st there's an interview, if there are no ranges. Yeah? So you want to read that? No ranges. So okay, let's start with phase 1, resume. I think
So essentially, okay, in a nutshell, I think you've already heard enough about resumes by now. So resume should be a one-pager, like standard point road. Okay, let's do this. So essentially, I'm going to skim through all the generic parts of a resume. We're going to deep dive into what's necessary for consulting. So essentially, what consulting companies look for is impact and breadth, a little bit of breadth. So what you're going to look for is look at your internships, look at your scholarships, look at your positions of responsibility, look at your literary, cultural, whatever spikes you've got. So essentially take a minute to reflect upon yourself and identify 3 spheres that you think are very important to you. So once you do that, try to figure out which bucket they would fit in. So that's kind of essentially how you do not fall into this trap of trying to create a resume looking at a standard template. So that's essential, because I think a lot of you might look at a senior's resume and think that such and such a person had a lot of positions of responsibility, was he a better candidate? Not necessarily. Like if you have a patent, if you have a good research project, that is well and good as well. So take a minute to reflect upon yourself. Essentially that resume should be a reflection of your best self. So once you get that done, try to follow this approach when you're writing down each point of a resume. Look at situation, task, action taken and the result. So it's called the STAR thing. It's called the STAR approach. So essentially for each point that you're doing, essentially if it's a big point, like say an internship, so you would probably have to talk about what was your role. So that would be situation. Then you would talk about what were you supposed to do. So then like what all you had to do in a little bit of detail. So that would be task. So then the kind of reduction you brought about. So that would be a little bit of action and impact. So try to follow that kind of pattern with each point. And make sure that your points are pretty crisp. Like never have a point that actually runs into 2 lines. That means you're not being crisp enough. So essentially that is in a nutshell what a resume, what a consulting firm would look for. Anything else?
Okay, so broadly, I think it was fine.
Yeah, so if you actually take a look at all of us, none of our resumes will actually be similar. All of it will be different, but what will be common in all of our resumes is the spikes. So like he said, it's about impact. So what consulting firms actually look at is they need to make sure that you have people skills. So for that they look at PORs. That will guarantee that you've been interacting with people and you can do it. Spikes,
Need PORs.
no, not exactly PORs. One of them is PORs, and let's say they take a look at drive. So which is why they take a look at your extracurriculars or co-curriculars apart from your academics, right? So they want to like just make sure that everybody that they shortlist is driven towards something. So that's pretty much
So
it.
when they read a resume, what you should aim to do, and when you're judging whether you're going to make it or not, the shortlist, is when you're thinking about yourself, you should find at least 2 things that you're really good at.
That's standout.
2 to 3. 2 is the lower limit. So, so for example, I mean, okay, let's just give an example. So, some of us here